My husband refused to have any kind of relationship with his biological daughter after finding out the circumstances of her conception, but things took a turn when she unexpectedly showed up at his office,
making demands.
For some background, my husband, 42, and I, 36, have a strong, stable relationship. We've been together for about 13 years, have no children of our own, but are very involved in my 4-year-old nephew,
Mark's
life.
My husband has a daughter,
Laura, 16,
who maintains a relationship mainly with my mother-in-law, Mil, and to some extent,
my father-in-law, Fil.
The reason for this is that Laura was conceived under deceitful circumstances. Her mother tampered with the condoms, hoping to trap my husband into staying with her. The whole situation was a mess, with my Mil begging my husband to form a relationship with Laura, but he simply couldn't bring himself to do it. He even sought therapy to cope with the trauma. The mother later admitted that she intentionally sabotaged the condoms to force him into a commitment, but it didn't work. My husband pays child support, as required by law, but he has no desire for any further involvement. I first heard about this from my Mil, who, in a conversation, strongly implied that I should somehow encourage a relationship between my husband and Laura. I was shocked and immediately confronted my husband,
who explained that he had intended to tell me about it before we moved in together.
He assured me that he'd already mentioned the situation in bits and pieces over time, and he was willing to go to therapy together and even let me see his psychiatric records. So, while it wasn't exactly as my Mil had presented it, the situation was complicated. My sister-in-law, Sal, also confirmed the details, explaining that this situation had caused a strain in her relationship with their parents. Things remained tense for a while, but we made it through our wedding without any major issues. We've set clear boundaries, which Mil generally respects, though she still maintains constant communication with Laura and her mother. There have been periods of very low contact between us and Mil, but things escalated when Mark was born. Mil started telling everyone that Mark wasn't her first grandchild and made some cryptic comments that left my husband visibly uncomfortable. She pushed for Laura to be involved in family events like birthdays and christenings, but we repeatedly said no. Mil invited both Laura and her mom to her birthday parties, and we didn't attend. Now, the new issue is that Laura has expressed being upset about the lack of a relationship with her biological father. My husband's stance hasn't changed, and he left the situation immediately when she showed up at his office. I stayed behind to gather our things, and I firmly told Laura that it wasn't going to happen. According to Mil, Laura simply wants to know my husband because, as she put it, he's her real dad. Despite being okay with her stepfather, it doesn't feel the same to her. Mil said she'd give Laura our address and contact information because she was desperate to connect. I told her that I would call the police if that happened and warned her that my Sil would be furious when she finds out, especially if it led to her seeing less of Mark. Mil lashed out, calling my husband cruel and accusing me of encouraging his cruelty toward an innocent child. I explained that while I understand Laura is innocent in all of this, she likely wouldn't be asking for a relationship if the situation were reversed, if a man had manipulated a woman into a pregnancy under similar circumstances. Edit. Thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts, even if they were critical. I want to clarify a few points, as I'm still processing the situation. The reason I asked if I was in the wrong was because I stand by my husband completely, even if it means not agreeing with his family. The condom didn't break, he was adamant about using them, and she assured him she was on birth control. Later, she confessed to sabotaging the condoms when my husband suggested abortion or expressed that he didn't want to stay in the relationship. Mil knows all of this. Laura's mother isn't in jail because Mil begged my husband not to report it. He just wanted to put it all behind him.
Initially,
Fil was furious, but that changed when my Sil asked him how he'd feel if the situation happened to her. Mil is on thin ice with Sil after introducing Laura to Mark without consulting her first. As a result, Mil is no longer allowed unsupervised time with Mark. My husband has to pay child support until Laura turns 18 or completes her education.
He's ensured that his will leaves her the legal minimum allowed.
But everything else goes to me and Mark. Mil is upset about this because my husband has made me and Mark his primary beneficiaries. He has no intention of meeting Laura, giving her a letter, or having any further contact, and I will not pressure him into doing so. I think Mil is pushing harder because Mark was born. My husband is amazing with him.
And we've taken him on trips.
showering him with love and spending a lot on him because we want to. Our house is in my name for various reasons, but I don't think Laura knows this, and I wouldn't tell her, it's not my place. Despite everything, it would be terrible for her to find out the truth from someone she doesn't even know. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who took the time to reply, even if you were against us. Your comments helped us gain clarity on the situation. I showed my husband the post,
And after reading through the responses,
he realized enough was enough. Yesterday, he texted my SIL and MIL, saying he wanted to meet and finally settle this once and for all. MIL agreed to meet in the afternoon, and Laura would be coming too. We all agreed to meet. When we arrived, my SIL and BL were waiting at the door, not wanting to enter before us. The tension was palpable from the start. Laura tried to hug everyone, but we asked her not to. She then attempted to hug my husband, and he was less polite, firmly asking her not to touch him. MIL was unervingly cheerful,
while FIL acted as if everything was normal,
offering drinks and snacks, like he was living in an alternate reality. After a long, uncomfortable silence,
my husband turned to Laura and simply asked her to leave him alone.
Laura responded by saying that, as her father, he would need to support her when she moved to our city for university. She mentioned how expensive it was and asked if he could help her find a place to live, given that he owned his home and had financial resources. My husband said no, emphasizing that he was already paying child support and would continue to do so until the law allowed him to stop. Laura persisted, shifting focus to me. She said that one day, everything my husband owned would go to her because of inheritance laws. She wanted to stay on good terms with me, hoping that when the time came, we could decide what to do with the house. I told her not to worry, our house is in my name.
And there's already a will in place that covers everything.
Laura was taken aback, looking at MIL for help. She then said,
even if there was no future inheritance.
She thought my husband was being unfair. She'd always assumed he simply didn't want to be a father, but now that she saw how amazing he was with Mark, taking him on trips and being so loving, she felt abandoned. At that point, Myasael looked at Laura, her patience running thin, and asked her point blank. Laura knew full well how she was conceived.
And she admitted that while it wasn't the ideal way to come into the world,
her mother wanted her so badly that she took drastic measures to make it happen. She tried to explain to my sister-in-law, SIL, that she should understand, because she has her cousin Mark, and would love to have a similar relationship with him. Myasael was fuming, and my father-in-law, FIL, immediately told Laura that if she even tried to get near Mark, he would call the police. Laura broke down in tears, saying she just wanted her family to love her the same way they did Mark. She insisted it wasn't her fault, and that her mother wasn't a bad person, she just wanted a family, and my husband had denied her that. My husband calmly responded that it wasn't his fault the relationship had soured, it was the lying and manipulation that had led to this. He said that if things had been honest from the start, maybe things could have been different, but as it stood, he would never be her father. He told her that she needed therapy and suggested she get a job instead of expecting him to financially support her life indefinitely. He made it clear that after that day, he had no intention of maintaining any contact with her. MIL immediately began begging both of her children to reconsider and suggested they try family therapy, but both my husband and SIL shut her down, stating they were going no contact with her. FIL is now on very thin ice with MIL, and she's been blocked everywhere by all of us. We've made the decision to cut contact with her completely. SIL and my husband are actually relieved by the decision, and we had a peaceful dinner afterward, where the topic was dropped almost immediately. We moved on to other conversations, focusing on happier things. I know this isn't a happy ending, but in the end, it's the best choice for all of us, especially for my husband's mental health.
I will continue to stand by him,
no matter what. Edit. I want to briefly play devil's advocate regarding the financial side of things. When Mark was born, my husband and I became very involved in his life. We have yearly zoo passes, we spoil him with nice gifts, we pick him up from daycare twice a week, and we even took him to Disneyland Paris. I think this is part of why my MIL started pushing harder for a relationship with Laura. She probably saw the attention we were giving Mark and felt left out. Laura's mother isn't financially struggling, though she does have 2 other children, and I'm aware that our city is notorious for its high living costs, especially for students. My husband and I aren't interested in having children of our own. We're neutral on the issue, which may have made MIL more eager to push for a bond with Laura. For a while, we did give Laura some pocket money, but we've decided to stop that too. Now, she'll have to rely on her pension, like many others her age. We don't expect any further updates on this situation unless Laura or Mil somehow show up to try and engage with Mark, but honestly, I highly doubt that'll happen. They're just two people, one a teenager, the other an older woman, not masterminds with some grand plan. Update 2. Thank you again to everyone who offered encouraging support, and a big F to those calling us all monsters. We're all human and far from perfect. I thought this chapter was closed, but it seems that it isn't. A few weeks after my last update, my nephew Mark turned 5. After several messages from my Mil and Fil, Mil finally decided to let them attend Mark's birthday party, but she made it clear to Mil that she wasn't to approach me or my husband. Mil respected this and kept her distance, although she couldn't help but stare at us. We chose to ignore her, but things took a turn when I kept holding my stomach and my husband acted overly goofy around me. To be clear, I'm not pregnant. I have several food intolerances that cause bloating, but I sometimes indulge in foods that trigger it. Mil doesn't know about these issues, as we've often had low contact periods with her, so I suppose she assumed I was pregnant.
A week after Mark's birthday party,
everything spiraled out of control. Laura showed up at my husband's office and caused a huge scene. She was screaming, accusing him of abandoning his first child, and throwing office supplies in a rage. She was in tears, and it was an all-out spectacle. The office manager immediately called the police and an ambulance, and they also called me. By the time I arrived, my husband was in the middle of a panic attack in his office, terrified he was going to be fired. I told him to calm down, that I would handle things.
I explained everything to his coworkers,
the police, and him. While Laura was taken in for evaluation, his co-workers kindly gave him a long lunch break so he could leave without having to walk out awkwardly in front of the team. I took my husband home, both of us shaken. He was still panicking and crying, convinced he was unsafe. I immediately took him to his psychiatrist, who helped him calm down. A few days later, we had another therapy session, where he opened up more about the trauma he endured with Laura's mother. The whole ordeal has been very expensive, but absolutely worth it for my husband's well-being. Laura wasn't really in trouble. The office manager let things go with an apology and a small restitution payment, but her mother, who is a doctor, was furious. When she saw my husband at the police station, she completely lost it, and he suffered another panic attack. In therapy, we uncovered something even more disturbing. During their relationship, Laura's mother once threatened my husband with a knife. That revelation has given us a lot more insight into his reactions. Mil, completely done with Mil at this point, told Fil that he had a choice, either divorce her, or she was cutting him off as well. It's still up in the air with Sil, though,
as she's Fil's favorite.
And they've been married for 44 years. Fil did take my husband camping afterward, and it was a welcome distraction. He's now mainly on sick leave, which his bosses recommended. They've been supportive and allowed him to take the time he needs to recover, even offering him lighter duties when he does return to work. Things are still tense between Sil, my husband, and my Fil, as we've all been dealing with the emotional fallout of Laura's behavior.
This chapter of our lives is far from over,
and it's been harder than I ever expected. I suggested to my husband that we offer Laura a lump sum payment along with therapy, but the rest of the family is adamant that she should receive nothing. I told them I'd be willing to pay for it myself, but after learning more about the disturbing relationship between Laura's mother and my husband,
Sil has become even more resolute in her stance of not offering any further support.
I do feel sorry for Laura, I really do, and I know the rest of the family feels the same, but right now, there's no way in hell anyone is going to help her beyond what's already been given. The last kind thing my husband did for Laura was to convince his boss not to press charges against her for the office incident and to pay for the monitor she broke. Since then, he's been spending more time with Mark, Sil, and Bill, while taking the lead in trying to convince Laura to accept a lump sum payment and therapy without seeking any further involvement in their lives. Meanwhile, Mil and Fil are estranged, and my husband's therapy sessions continue as he works to heal from all that's happened. For those questioning it, yes,
we understand that Laura is also a victim of her mother's manipulation.
But does that give her the right to keep re-traumatizing my husband? I will stand by my husband in this, no matter what people might say. Some of the advice I've received has been helpful, which is why I felt compelled to return and share these updates. Update 3. Thank you once again to everyone who's been supportive. I also appreciate those who've shared their honest opinions, even if they were tough to hear. For those who feel the need to say hurtful things,
It's easy to hide behind a screen.
but I'll take the criticism. After the events at my husband's office, he requested to work from home, and that decision ended up benefiting his team as well.
With most of the company switching to remote work,
This resulted in a significant pay bump, which also meant that child support payments had to be recalculated because of his higher salary. This shift in income has impacted the negotiations regarding the lump sum payment I had proposed, but we've come to terms with it. My husband may need to continue paying child support until Laura finishes university, but that's something we can manage, especially with our joint savings account, though only my name is on it. After all the chaos, I received a message from Laura's stepfather. I'd never met him in person, but I felt the need to respond. Long story short, he's been trying to officially adopt Laura for the past decade. But her mom, along with my MIL, had told him that my husband had refused. He also claimed that Laura and my husband had some kind of relationship and that Laura used to stay with us, which we tried to keep separate. I don't know if he's trying to manipulate us or just make us feel guilty, but he promised to get Laura and her mom into therapy. This conversation took place back in July. Then, in September, my FIL unexpectedly passed away from a stroke. It was a huge shock to all of us. His children organized a beautiful funeral, and that was the last time we saw MIL and Laura. Laura spent most of the time with her maternal side of the family but eventually approached my husband and SIL to apologize for her outburst at the office.
She completely ignored me.
But I wasn't upset by it. Since that encounter, she hasn't reached out to either of them, and with the no-contact decision still in place, I highly doubt she will. Everyone in the family knows about the situation now, but no one wants to get involved in the drama because of MIL's temper tantrums. This will be my last update because there's finally some good news. I'm about 4 months pregnant. My husband is absolutely over the moon, and we're both beyond excited. I know some people might have negative comments, but for those who are happy for us,
We appreciate your support.
we're looking forward to this new chapter in our lives and focusing on our healing as a family, which now includes Sale, Bill, and our nephew. My nephew's first question was whether the baby could go to the zoo with him, since he's eager to show the baby the monkeys.
It was such a sweet moment.
He's been telling all of his friends at kindergarten about it. I truly believe this will be a healing experience for everyone involved. My husband has started to open up more about everything that happened and why he's reacted the way he has, not just to me and our family but also to his friends. They knew parts of the story, but not the whole truth. Sharing this has been really therapeutic for him, helping him move past some of the shame and guilt he carried for so long. As for Laura and MIL, I do hope they can find healing in their own time, but for now, we need to focus on our family and not get sucked into the drama. Wishing everyone the best.